Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from our Kansas City studios on the western side of the state. We are joined by the Lieutenant Governor-elect of the state of Missouri, Senator Mike Parson. When I think Missouri, I think Mike Parson. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you very much, Scott. What a victory, and we spent a lot of time, a lot of hard work trying to get our message to the people of Missouri, and we're just so thankful that they give us the opportunity to serve as the next Lieutenant Governor. So we're really looking forward to the challenges.
Looking back on the race, what were some of the most important parts that brought you the victory?
You know what, I think, Scott, the work ethic. I think 18 months of just working hard, meeting people, trying to get your name out there, and being who you were, being honest with people. You know, even showing your flaws to a certain degree, but every day just going out there being who you was. And I told a meeting the other night, you know, and you'd hear it from time to time, somebody says, well, you can't win because of where you come from in the state, or your pedigree's not quite good enough, or you don't have the money. Every time I heard those things, I got up a little earlier, I worked a little later, and I never did believe anybody would outwork us for running for this race.
People talk about these mega donors and the folks that give all this money. You did not have mega donors.
Never had any of the millionaire money in the
You raised a good amount of money,
state of Missouri.
Yeah.
It was the people. We are so proud that almost 99% of the money that come into our campaign was in the borders of Missouri, and it was everyday people that helped us. Every day. We had more donors than any statewide candidate, period.
Let's talk about Lieutenant Governor's office and what that actually does. When you're the Lieutenant Governor, what does that mean?
Well, you know, for one, you're in a very place where you're going to have a lot of responsibility. One, you oversee the Senate, which is something that most people overlook or don't understand the technical side of it. But every day you're going to be sitting, you're presiding over the Senate. So you want to make sure that that body of government functions well, both Democrat and Republican, that you make sure that it runs smooth and we move legislation forward that benefits Missourians. So that's one of the jobs. But the other one's like advocating for veterans. Well, you know, being a United States Army veteran and serving 2 years in the 6 years in the military, you know, that's going to be a natural for me. And I think having that background will help me in that. And advocating for seniors, whether I like it or not, I got enough gray hair, I qualify, so I kind of understand how the senior population feels a little bit. So I'm going to do that. Tourism, you know, I sit and think that's going to be a great opportunity to promote Missouri, Missouri products, Missouri towns, Missouri businesses. You know, so I'm excited about it. And needless to say, agriculture is a pretty natural for me, the #1 industry in the state. I think being the only elected official that actually has a farm background is going to be important.
You know, going around in the campaign, I remember Governor-elect Greitens. He had brought you up as somebody that, you know, that does know agriculture, somebody that he'd be close to, and he said publicly that, hey, I'm going to be elected governor, but I'm going to have Mike Parson with me to the ag community. Probably made a lot of rural Missourians feel good. When you talk about being his ear on agriculture policy, what are you going to be saying?
You know what? I'm going to be giving him guidance. I'm going to try to make him the best agriculture governor I can make him. You know, whatever I can do to help him to understand, to educate him, and to make sure he understands how important agriculture is to the state. And Scott, sometimes it's more than just saying it's the #1 industry. You know, it's pretty well the heart and soul of who we are in this state. Every region of the state is touched with agriculture in some form, some way, whether it's Kansas City, St. Louis. So agriculture is a huge arena, and it's something I feel like I can help him with.
You know, you're the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Missouri. I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County. But I think there was a lot of folks that thought the future was drinking Starbucks and double latte, whatever. But I think some folks figured out, rural Missourians, there's still a few of them, and I think Donald Trump found out how to get them to vote.
Hey, there's no doubt about that. I mean, if you traveled a state like I did for 18 months, all these small little towns that sometimes people overlook because of a small population or just because of where they're at, those people were out in force this time. And if you look back into the primary and the general elections, in my particular case, being the only candidate from rural Missouri, you win 110 out of 114 counties. It's because rural Missouri united together and come out with a high percentage. Rural Missouri voters come out 65, 70%. Yeah. That's a big deal. So I don't want to have the idea that you divide the state sometimes, although it just happens just by the nature of it, whether it's St. Louis and Kansas City or you get urban versus rural. I think one of the things that jobs for me as Lieutenant Governor, how do you bridge that gap? How do you make sure we don't divide up, especially when it's issues that are good for the state of Missouri? And those are the things I think I can bring to the table because of the people I do know, and whether it be Kansas City, St. Louis, or the urban areas.
I want to talk about presiding over the Senate. That is probably the main job that actually has importance over the state public policy process. You'll be in the chair. I guess my first question is, are you going to be an active lieutenant governor? Will you be at the dais?
I plan every day that Senate's in session. I plan on being there.
Well, you're a former senator. I mean, it's not. I always thought you enjoyed being a senator.
You know what? There's a huge difference between politicians and statesmen, and I think when you get into the Missouri Senate, you become much more of a statesman than you do a politician, because you understand that everyone in that room has equal value of who they are as a legislator. And I think you're going to understand pretty quickly, for the ones that get things done, that you got to work with both sides of the aisle. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So I look forward to presiding over this Senate, as long as those guys don't give me a hard time every day, because I used to sit out there where they did. So we'll work on that.
Talking about being a statesman, there was some controversy last session about not just PQs, but whether people recognize in the order they went into. How do you approach that? I mean, that's a pretty delicate issue, and it's still sort of a raw nerve to some senators.
You know, I think you got to be very careful using the PQ too often. I don't think you want the Missouri Senate to become the Missouri House. I think they function two different ways for a reason. So I think it's important that you maintain a lot of that character, that heritage of the Missouri Senate. So I think you got to be careful about using the PQ. And I think it should only be used as the last resort. After everything else is exhausted, you choose.
You being a senator is going to give you a big advantage, I think, as far as the rules go. But as far as keeping order, who to recognize when, it seems like on a regular Tuesday afternoon, it's not that big a deal. But after people have been up all night, at 4 in the morning, it's easy to gloss over, I guess, a few details of how to do things. Will there be somebody on your staff working with the Senate administrator and Senate secretary?
Look, it's almost go back to the old days of law enforcement or sheriff. There is laws, there is rules. You abide by the rules, no matter who you are, no matter what your title is in the Missouri Senate. If the rules say this is the way we conduct business, that's the way we need to conduct business. And that's the way I plan on doing it as a lieutenant governor.
Last thing I want to talk with you about is you're a former sheriff of Polk County.
Correct.
We've all seen the tragic police shootings that have came out. One in Kansas City, several in St. Louis, another one a couple weeks ago. The governor-elect's wife was actually mugged this week. What do you tell folks, as a former law enforcement officer yourself?
Well,
what do you do about this epidemic that's hit Missouri?
Listen, I think it starts with leadership. It starts with the governor. It starts with the senators. It starts with the rep. That you have to stand up for our emergency personnel, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's EMT, whether it's firefighters. Look, you cannot keep going down the road we're going to, where law enforcement officers, when they walk out that door of a morning, have to worry about being executed simply because they wear a uniform. You cannot allow that happen, because what's going to happen, you're not going to have good qualified people that want to do this, and you're going to have wannabe people that want to do it. And it's not the way this system is. We're a nation of rules and laws for a reason. But no law enforcement officer should have to leave his house of a morning, tell his wife goodbye with everything else he's got to worry about. Felons, robbers, drug dealers, everything he has to do, without having to worry about simply being executed because you wear a uniform. And Missourians, I truly believe Missourians will stand up for our emergency personnel in this state. And I will do everything I can within my powers as an elected official to make sure that we back our men and women that serve us every day, whether it be in law enforcement, whether it be police, sheriff, fire, EMTs, because that is the jobs that most of us don't want to do. And if we don't show them the proper respect, give them the proper backing that they need to do their jobs, then we're going to go down a path of doom. That's where we're going to go.
The governor-elect said he was going to look to you on agriculture issues. You said you were going to make you the most pro-agriculture governor in the history of the state. We look forward to watching that unfold on This Week in Missouri Politics. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here this morning, Scott.
Well, that was Governor-elect Mike Parson, Lieutenant Governor-elect Mike Parson. We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel, including Senators Holzman and Sylvie. It'll be a good time.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
St. Louis is a special place. This is home.
And we're more than a community.
We're a family. We value hard work. We sacrifice.
And even in tough times, we don't run. We work together.
Except if you're Stan Kroenke, a Walmart billionaire. He took our Rams to Los Angeles.
We just didn't lose a football team. We lost good jobs.
He hurt our economy, our families. He turned his back on us, our values, our town.
And for what?
So he can make millions more?
Well, we may not have our Rams, but this football Sunday, we can all send Stan and Walmart a message.
Shop local, not Walmart.
Shop Dearborn.
Shop Schnucks.
Shop and save.
Stand up for community.
Put our family first because Kroenke may have taken our team,
But they'll never take away who we are.
At Ameren, Missouri, we're committed to providing cleaner energy
for generations to come.
Our new state-of-the-art solar energy center is a great example of that commitment. It's part of our long-range plan to deliver more than 30% of our power from cleaner resources.
Making sure your energy future is not just brighter,
but cleaner too. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics in our Kansas City studios with an all Kansas City opinion maker panel, starting with Senator-elect Representative John Rizzo. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Holzman, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Clad in your Chiefs gear, yes, absolutely. Noel Torpy, former legislator from the Independence area, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me.
And Senator Sylvie, I think you might be a Chiefs fan. Something's tipping me off here.
It's Raider Week.
I've always thought you are the most important or most opinionated person in the state. And this may make you the most important, being having an opinion and being willing to share it. What do you? Now the Republicans have won everything you could win. What do you do with it?
You know, I think you'll see a real flurry of activity similar to when Matt Blunt became the governor, and we hadn't had it for a long time. There'll be a few things that get done pretty early, but there's not going to be the huge backlog that Blunt had because we've overridden so many vetoes in the last few years.
Noel Torpy, you've served in the legislature. Republicans hold the presidency. They hold the U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate. They hold the governorship in Missouri. They hold the State House and State Senate. What do they do with all that power?
Well, I think in the first few weeks, you're going to see right to work, you're going to see paycheck protection, you're going to see tort reform, you're going to see many pro-business legislations get passed probably before spring break. And so after that, we'll see what happens, maybe even some education reform.
You know, we've been told right to work is the panacea, that there's all this money sitting on the state line waiting to come in if you pass right to work. If you don't grow a lot of jobs, if you pass it in 2017 and you don't have a lot of job growth in 2018, what are Republicans going to say?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some fallout for sure if that doesn't happen.
Prediction, do you think that there's a bunch of jobs coming from right to work?
No, I think some, but not a bunch.
Let's talk, Senator-elect Rizzo, you've been on the campaign trail in the summer, the fall, talking to people. There's probably two races in the state that the Democrats won that the Republicans had any chance to win. It was yours and Senator Sifton's. What did you learn on the campaign trail from folks, and what made your race come in positively for Democrats?
You know, we worked really, really hard. You know, we hit a lot of doors. We talked to people on their front doorstep, and we asked them what was important to them, and we tailored our message around that, what was important to the people of the 11th District.
So what can you tell folks winning a competitive race this cycle, in one of the worst cycles for Democrats ever in this state, that they could use to help the Democratic Party kind of pivot forward?
You know, we have got to start talking about what we're going to do for people, what we're going to do for the working class family in the state of Missouri, and not so much talking about how bad the other side is. I think the national election, the presidential election, took a tone of the other person's worse than me, so vote for me, instead of going out there and just telling them how we're going to keep college affordable, how we're going to make your jobs, make more money in your job and job security and so on and so forth. That's what people care about.
Senator Holzman, 8 years ago, big night for Democrats, a lot of success. This year, the exact opposite. What happened in 8 years?
Well, I think our elections are becoming nationalized. We're seeing 24-hour news cycles and social media sort of dominate a lot of the discussion. Even though our presidential candidate lost by 19 points, our governor candidate still got 46%. It's 1.25 million people in the state who want the Democratic agenda. And I think that as senators who come back, there's 9 of us in this next session, it's important that we carry their voice into that discussion. These policies are complicated and they're important and they have unintended consequences. And if we don't represent the ideals that we have as a party, then we truly will be lost in the wilderness.
Can you win in Missouri long-term with a national party that's pro-choice and anti-gun?
I think that I would like to see some modifications. I'm a pro-choice candidate, always have been. I believe in a woman's right to choose. Until they overturn Roe v. Wade, that's going to be the law of the land. That could happen. It could be sent back to the states, and I would think that would be a bad policy decision for our country in terms of the unintended consequences that has. I like to look at this from a social science standpoint. Remove the politics of it, remove the emotional ideology, and let's look at the actual science behind what happens to society when we make these changes. And that's where I try to govern from, and I think that if both parties govern from the same place and we use the same set of facts, then we're going to get to a condition in our society where we're positive and we're progressive. And I think that those discussions are going to be very important. They're going to be emotional, and they have to happen because nothing is settled right now. And this election gave power to the Republicans nationally and in our state, and elections have consequences. And I think as Democrats, we understand that there are going to be parts of the Republican agenda that are going to move forward and they're going to pass, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a part in shaping that. The one thing I don't want to have happen is us take Mitch McConnell's position, which is any success for the Republicans is a failure for us, because the people are tired of that and they're ready for us to work together to try to make the best policy with the best outcomes as possible.
Representative Rizzo, the seat of Mike Parson will be open pretty quick here. You can't win that with a pro-choice, anti-gun candidate, can you?
No, and I think we need to remember this is an uncharted territory. 2004, Matt Blunt was governor, Republican House and Senate, and in 2008, President Obama had a great run, and Democrats did well in 2008. So as outlandish as the outcome was for some people in the country and in the state, November 8th, this is an uncharted territory. And what we need to do is get back to basics and talking to people about how we're going to create jobs and how we're going to make their lives better in the state of Missouri as Democrats and what we stand for.
Ryan Silvey, Donald Trump wins the election, Missouri in a landslide. What do you think? What do you think so far of the transition he's done?
You know, I think somebody needs to take his phone away. To be honest. But I think as far as some of the positions that he's filled, I think picking Governor Branstad to be the ambassador to China, I think was a good move. I'm cautiously optimistic to see how his cabinet fills out.
Well, Dort, what do you think? I mean, look at the carrier thing. I know the media hates it. There's some folks that hate it. By God, it looked to me like I saw him on TV saving jobs.
Yeah, I mean, he's, like Senator said, he's done some good things. He's done some questionable things, but I hope the country will give him a chance. And
looks like the country's giving him a chance. The media's not going to give him a chance.
Well, and I don't think that'll ever happen. I don't think the media wants to give him a chance. They want to see him fail, and that's unfortunate because America really needs him to be successful to move the country in the right direction.
Representative Rizzo, I saw something interesting. Tony Messenger in the Post-Dispatch, they don't like tax credits. They want to eliminate them from Missouri. Donald J. Trump saved 1,000 jobs with tax credits. Where do you think the Republicans go? Do they go to the Tony Messenger Post-Dispatch economic development, or do they go to the Donald J. Trump economic development? Looks like the state's probably on Donald Trump's side.
Well, I would say that the Republican Party is going to be in a real quagmire with Donald Trump just in general on a lot of issues.
We've seen some pretty liberal Republicans try to cut tax credits in the state before.
Sure.
this time, the president, the most popular person in, I mean, your district, very pro-Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I wonder if the Republicans spit in his eye.
Yeah, I tend to believe that Donald Trump's going to have a lot more problems in Washington with Republicans like Paul Ryan and so forth that are into that doctrine of anti-tax credits and so on and so forth than he's going to have with the Democratic Party.
So it's an interesting day. I mean, I think you'll see some folks in the Republican Party say, let's go to all the tax credits. And it looks like Donald Trump's a big fan of tax credits.
Well, if they work, and they make sense for the state. You know, again, getting back to the science of it. If you show me a tax credit that is a net positive in revenue for the state, then I'm willing to discuss that. If it's just a tax credit because a donor gave money to a candidate and that candidate is then trying to make an investment return for that donor, then I think that that's the wrong direction, and you'll have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
So far, how's Trump doing?
I think he's winning the headlines war.
Yeah,
I do. I think the carrier headline was a good headline for him. Having said that,
he's just trailing the media around. They just play right into his hand.
They do. No, he's very good at baiting the media, and they're very good at taking it consistently.
He's very unconventional.
Yeah.
For sure.
Senator Holzman, I think your sentiment is more of a statesman. Don't just say no all the time.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump and the media, he could maybe marginalize them. And if you're a Republican, you're probably going to get a little worse coverage than a Democrat.
Well, but the media is so diffused now. It's not. It used to be 3 channels that you had to get a majority, and when you had the integrity of a Walter Cronkite that you believed, no matter what he said, that was the news. Now Americans are looking at all these different sources. This fake news epidemic that's popped up in the last election. So people aren't sure what to believe. And when Donald Trump, the president-elect, soon to be president of the United States, says, "Don't believe them," and people believe Donald, then you're going to have that conflict.
Well, Torby, I think a lot of conservatives have felt like there was some fakeness to the news for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think not necessarily fakeness, but slanted in the stories they covered. And not always covering, news channels, newspapers decide to cover just certain subject matters and not all news. And that's where I think that stems from, a lot of it.
Brian Slevy, where does this session go? Do you think that, I watched the Republicans, when Matt Blunt was governor, first pass a bunch of stuff. And they kind of passed everything early, and then they fought each other for a few years. Where do you think this session goes? Does it end up in gridlock? Do you guys move a lot of stuff?
I think we move a lot of stuff early, and I think it's a lot of the stuff that Noel mentioned. But I think that's going to be the challenge. Where do we go after that? What is the agenda after we do the things that we've put on the governor's desk that he's vetoed and has been sustained? I think it remains to be seen.
What does the budget do? You probably know more about the budget than anybody in the legislature.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough year on the budget. We're already looking at a deficit. Medicaid continues to grow unsustainably. Until we get our hands around entitlements and federal matching programs that we participate in, it's going to be tough.
Well, Dorby, I think cutting government's not a bad thing. But when you get down to where you cut, you almost have to, instead of expanding Medicaid, you almost have to cut it.
Yeah, and that's going to be tough decisions. The governor withheld $50 million, yesterday, and the budget chair in the House, Fitzpatrick, said, that's $200 million short. So the 3 of you are going to have very tough decisions to make moving forward because there are going to have to be some tough cuts.
My question to you is, Senator Rizzo, let's say Donald Trump takes Obamacare and they reshuffle it and say let's call it Reagan Care now. Let's call it Edmund Burke Care. Yeah. I think Missouri may grab onto that to plug their budget holes.
Yeah, I think at a certain point you almost have to for them. Sometimes the deficit just gets to where it's to a point to where, that money, if spent properly, could do a lot of good in the state of Missouri. And I think that it's possible that the Republican Party does take the new name change and run with it.
Senator Holzman, let's say the Republicans get Congress and Donald Trump take Obamacare, shuffle it up, change the name, call it Senator Dan Brown Care, and they send it out. Do you think the Republicans in the Missouri Senate grab onto that?
Well, it's old George Lakoff's "Don't think of an elephant," right? It's how you frame things often.
That's the first quote of that we've ever had on This Week in Missouri Politics.
It really does come down to the framing of it, and if Republicans can find the science in a block grant. Senator Sylvie has had a plan that would have worked for the last 3 years that they had just outright rejected because it goes back to that Mitch McConnell position of saying, we will not allow this president a success. Because if he has a success, then it lessens our chance to take that power back. The problem is that his success is our success. And I think that if you're a patriot and you believe in this country, it doesn't matter about the letter by your name. It matters about what's the impact on the people that you represent. And that is where I hope our conversation in this session goes, away from the electoral side of this discussion and more towards the policy side of what will happen if we take action and what will happen if we don't.
No, Jordan, this might not be popular at this table, but I'm not sure with Speaker Richardson, Scott Fitzpatrick, the House might have the more stick at the leadership table this session.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, they've both shown that they're very capable in those positions and are great leaders, and I think they're going to have a tremendous influence moving the state forward.
Last time, we have a little time for it. Everyone in the Kansas City area knows Senator McCaskill. She's up for re-election in 2018. Do you think the election of Donald Trump means she's running for re-election, Representative?
I think it's going to depend on what he does over the next year. If he's very successful and he continues to grab headlines like he does and moves forward and does things well, then it's going to be tremendously difficult for her to win. If he comes out and falls flat on his face after January 20th, obviously her stock increases and it gets better. But
you know, I think Senator McCaskill might be the best politician in the state right now. I think she definitely could win. I think it changes the whole dynamic, and she's probably the favorite now.
Yeah, she's earned the right to make that decision, and she's a smart politician. She's a survivor, and if she decides that she can run and win, then I believe that she can. She will.
Senator Sylvie, looking right now, you know a little bit about Senate politics. Who do you think runs?
You know, I think that we, as a party, should probably try to learn the lessons that the Democrats could teach us in this area, because they don't have 10 people in a primary and come through with somebody that has 20% of the vote. You know, they find somebody early and they solidify behind them, and then they go out into the general election. I mean, the last time Senator McCaskill ran, that was the problem the Republican Party had.
Yeah.
And if we find the right candidate to unite behind, I think she's in trouble.
Sarah Steelman's a nominee 4 years ago. I think she's a senator.
I think if either of the others were the nominee.
Well, Torby, who do you think? I mean, you have a statewide bench now. You have Schmidt, Parson, Josh Hawley, Jay Ashcroft. Who do you think the Republicans run?
Well, I agree with Senator Sylvie. I think whoever runs, hopefully the primary's cleared. But I think someone you didn't mention, who I think is the most talented of all of them, and no disrespect to anyone, but Speaker Todd Richardson. And I think you'll see over the next 2 years how strong he is and how good he is for the state of Missouri.
Coming off what should be a very successful legislative session, be very tough to beat. I want to thank everybody for joining us on our Kansas City edition. Kansas City Studios this week in Missouri Politics. Appreciate you guys. Hope you'll be back to talk about what should be the most interesting legislative session we've seen in a long time. And we'll discuss it every week on This Week in Missouri Politics. I want to give one more shout out to my fantasy league team. I think we all know who I play this week, and I'm going to win. See you next week. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.